It was a night of terror in Igbodudu, a village once peaceful, now ablaze under the darkening skies. Warriors from a rival kingdom stormed through the village, their faces painted with rage and vengeance. Flames danced from burning huts as men, women, and children scattered in fear, desperately seeking safety. The sacred grove, hidden in mist, seemed to watch in eerie silence as the village fell apart. Shadows stretched across the land as the heart of Igbodudu was shattered in the blink of an eye, leaving nothing but fear and the stench of smoke behind. Decades earlier, a great war raged between two Yoruba kingdoms, Igbodudu and its powerful neighbor, Oke-Ode. Both villages were home to fierce warriors, but Igbodudu's prosperity was threatened when Oke-Ode marched on their lands. Faced with certain destruction, the village's chief made a fateful decision. He betrayed a group of allied warriors from Oke-Ode, selling them out to their enemies for peace. These warriors, ambushed and outnumbered, were slaughtered in a blood-soaked grove just outside the village. The bodies of the fallen warriors were left to rot, unburied and dishonored. The sacred rites that should have guided their spirits to the afterlife were never performed. Instead, their souls became bound to the earth, transforming into Owu, restless spirits trapped between the world of the living and the dead. These spirits were fueled by rage, their anger growing as the village that betrayed them flourished. Generations had passed since the betrayal, and the story of the Owu had faded into myth. Children even sang songs about the myth. Mothers laughed at the songs. Unbeknownst to them, the Owu were enraged. First, the river that nourished the crops turned black, the water thick and foul. Then, the crops themselves began to die, shriveling up as though touched by an invisible hand. People started falling ill, their skin pale and feverish, haunted by nightmares in which they were chased by shadowy figures. Animals disappeared from their pens, only for their bones to be found near the ancient grove. Mothers, devastated by the mysterious disappearance of their children, live in constant fear as the villagers dread who will vanish next. Unbeknownst to them, the old myths they dismissed as mere folklore have returned, seeking revenge. At the center of it all was a young boy named Durotimi, a bright and inquisitive child of about 7 years. He had always been drawn to the old stories whispered by the village elders, tales of spirits, gods, and ancient beings that roamed the land long before humans had settled there. These stories fascinated him, though most of the other children found them terrifying. Durotimi, however, was different. His curiosity often got the better of him, and he longed to see if there was any truth to the legends. His mother, Iyabo, was a widow who had known loss all too well. Her husband, Durotimi's father, had mysteriously disappeared several years earlier while hunting in the forest. The pain of not knowing what had happened to him still haunted her. Since then, Iyabo had become fiercely protective of her only son. She warned him daily, with a voice edged in fear, to stay far away from the forbidden grove at the edge of the village, a place rumored to be cursed. The elders had always spoken of the grove with hushed voices, claiming it was the dwelling place of vengeful spirits, the same ones believed to have taken her husband. But Durotimi's curiosity was insatiable. He found it impossible to resist the pull of the unknown. Each time his mother repeated her warnings, it only ignited his imagination further. The forbidden grove called to him, its dark, ancient trees swaying ominously in the distance, as if beckoning him closer. He often lingered at the outskirts of the village, staring at the twisted branches that formed a shadowy barrier between the known world and whatever lay beyond. One fateful day, while the villagers were preoccupied with their daily tasks, Durotimi saw his chance. His mother had gone to fetch water, and the village was unusually quiet. Without thinking, he wandered away from his home, his small feet carrying him steadily toward the edge of the village. The sun was high, casting long shadows over the land as Durotimi ventured closer and closer to the grove. The air grew cooler as he approached the tree line. The usual sounds of birds and insects seemed to fade, replaced by an eerie stillness. For a moment, he hesitated, remembering his mother's words. But the pull was too strong, and with a mixture of excitement and fear, he took a step into the grove. He didn't return. When Dorotimi vanished, the village erupted in chaos and panic. A collective sense of dread hung in the air, as whispers of fear spread like wildfire among the villagers. His mother, Iyabo, was inconsolable, her cries echoing through the narrow streets as she tore through the village, begging anyone for help. Her heart raced with terror, and each second felt like an eternity as she called out for her son, her voice hoarse with desperation. As the night dipped in darker, casting a fiery glow over the land, search parties were hastily formed. Villagers armed themselves with torches and lanterns, their faces drawn tight with worry. However, when the discussions turned toward the forbidden grove, a palpable fear settled over the crowd. The elders, with their weathered faces and solemn expressions, exchanged worried glances before speaking up. They shared grim tales of the grove's dark history, stories passed down through generations of those who had dared to enter and never returned. The grove is cursed, one elder warned, his voice grave and trembling. It is a place where the Owu roam freely after dark, restless spirits, seeking vengeance for the wrongs of the living. Those who enter may be lost forever, swallowed by shadows and sorrow. Despite the fear coursing through them, some villagers were willing to risk it all, driven by the bond of community and the desperate need to find Dorotimi. However, the elders' warnings echoed in their minds, instilling a heavy sense of dread. The thought of facing the Owu, with their malevolent intent and tragic past, sent shivers down their spines. The idea of stepping foot in that cursed grove became a source of conflict. As nightfall approached, the village became eerily quiet, save for the sounds of Iyabo's anguished cries. Families huddled together, their hearts heavy with grief for a boy they had all watched grow up. The chilling realization dawned upon them. If the stories were true, they were not just searching for a missing child. They were standing on the edge of a nightmare. Determined not to lose hope, Iyabo rallied a few brave souls, imploring them to join her in the search. "We must try," she insisted, her eyes glistening with tears and a flicker of fierce determination. But the villagers hesitated, fear gripping their hearts. As the darkness descended, they stood at the threshold of the grove, debating whether to enter or retreat to the safety of the village. The weight of the stories hung over them, thick and suffocating, as they confronted the terrifying possibility that the grove might indeed be where Dorotimi had gone, and where the old legends whispered of horrors that awaited the unwary. In the stillness of his shrine, he communed with the spirits, casting sacred cowrie shells and tracing intricate patterns in the dust with trembling hands. His chants echoed through the small room, mingling with the thick smoke from the burning incense as he sought guidance from the unseen. Hours passed, but at last, a vision came to him, one that chilled him to the bone. Dorotimi had been taken by the Owu, the restless spirits of the dead. They had awakened, their thirst for vengeance unquenchable. They were not merely angry, they sought retribution for ancient wrongs, for betrayals buried in the village's forgotten past. And Dorotimi was only the beginning. The spirits' hunger for justice would not be satisfied with just one soul. Others would be claimed, dragged into the shadows, unless something was done to appease the wrath of the Owu. The Owu have been angered, Baba Olokun gravely informed the village council, his voice heavy with the weight of the revelation. They seek vengeance for the betrayal of their people. If we do not act, more will follow the boy into the shadows. The elders exchanged fearful glances, knowing that the diviner's warnings were never to be taken lightly. A deep silence fell over the room as they realized that the sins of the past had finally come to collect their debt. Distraught but determined to save her son, Iyabo approached Baba Olokun in the dead of the serene atmosphere. "I will do whatever it takes," she pleaded. "Tell me what I must do." Baba Olokun warned her that the path she sought was dangerous. The Owu could not be reasoned with. They were spirits of vengeance, locked in eternal rage. The only way to confront them was through a forbidden ritual, one that required a great sacrifice. The ritual involved entering the grove at night and offering the Owu a piece of her life, her soul, as penance for the sins of her ancestors. But there was more. She would need to convince the spirits to lift the curse, something no one had ever achieved before. If she failed, not only would she lose her life, but the Owu would claim Durotimi's soul forever, and the village would be doomed. As the sun set the following night, Iyabo, carrying a small lantern and the sacred amulet given to her by Baba Olokun, made her way to the grove. The village watched her in silence, too afraid to join her, but too horrified to look away. The air grew colder as she approached the trees, and a thick mist curled around her feet. The grove was ancient, the trees twisted and gnarled as though they had grown from the bones of the dead. The whispers started as soon as she crossed the threshold, faint at first, but growing louder with each step. Shadows darted between the trees, and she could feel unseen eyes watching her from the darkness. As she ventured deeper, the whispers turned into voices, accusing, angry voices. "Traitor, betrayer, thief," they hissed. She saw flashes of the past, warriors bleeding out on the ground, their eyes filled with betrayal and anger. The Owu began to emerge, their hollow eyes glowing in the mist, their faces twisted in fury. Iyabo, with tears rolling down her eyes, clutching the amulet as her heart pounded in her chest. "Please," she cried, her voice shaking. "I come to offer my life for my son. He is innocent. Punish me for the sins of my ancestors, but spare him." The spirits circled her, their forms flickering like dying flames. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, one spirit stepped forward, the leader of the fallen warriors, his body covered in battle scars. He spoke in a voice that was like the wind through dead leaves. "We do not seek your life, mortal," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. "We seek justice. For too long, we have been forgotten, our deaths unavenged, our souls trapped in darkness. But you offer something more valuable than your life." Iyabo trembled. "What is it you want?" The spirit's eyes gleamed. "Your village will pay for what they did. From this day forward, they will serve us. Every year, they will offer tribute in the form of sacrifices, blood for blood. If they fail, the curse will return, and it will be worse than before." Iyabo hesitated. She could save her son, but at what cost? The village would be bound to the spirits forever, a dark price for a sin they had buried long ago. But she had no choice. "I accept," she whispered. With her words, the spirits faded into the mist, leaving behind a single figure, Durotimi. He was pale and weak, but alive. Iyabo rushed to him, tears streaming down her face. She had saved her son, but the cost was steep. When she returned to the village, the people rejoiced at the sight of the boy, but their joy was short-lived. Baba Olokun revealed the pact Iyabo had made. Every year, the village would have to perform rites to honor the Owu, offering sacrifices to keep the curse at bay. If they failed, the Owu would return, more powerful and vengeful than before. The village had been spared, but they were now bound to the restless spirits of the grove, a reminder that the past could never truly be buried. Years passed, and every year, the village performed the rituals to appease the Owu. But the fear lingered. Whispers spread across the land about the cursed village of Igbodudu, where the restless dead demanded tribute from the living. Travelers avoided the grove, and those who ventured too close swore they heard the voices of the Owu in the wind, calling for justice, that would never come. In the end, the Owu had won, and the village would forever live in their shadow. I truly appreciate your time and love for these stories. If you'd like to hear more, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new tale.
Eternal echoes, a love so divine.